What's up, everybody? Welcome into the Next Pats podcast. I'm Phil Perry, and boy, do we have some things to talk about, friends. Just as soon as we released a podcast with Solomon Wilcots, former Bengal great, Solomon Wilcots, telling us about how great Tee Higgins is, that he is a legitimate number one receiver, that 80% of his catches go for first downs or for touchdowns, and that if the Patriots were to sign him, he would change their offense. No sooner do we release that podcast than the Bengals make it clear through their various channels that they plan to franchise tag one Tee Higgins, thereby taking him off the market, essentially, with the goal in mind that they would lock him up with a long-term contract. Now, in theory, they could tag him and eventually trade him if they don't feel as though they're able to work anything out. That's a possibility. It's always a possibility when the tag is in play. But we have to talk about this Tee Higgins situation because the situation hath changed. Friends, we're also going to get to a conversation with Riddick about Drake Maye. You heard just how high he was on Drake Maye during the season, this past season. He was on the podcast here talking about how he could be one of the game's greats at this position. That's how highly he thinks of Drake Maye. That's how strongly he believes in his skill set. And you're going to hear Lewis talk specifically about the marriage between Drake Maye and Mike Vrabel. We get into the McDaniels-Maye union as well, but that feels like ground that we have tread over the course of the last few weeks, last month or so, since it became clear that Josh McDaniels was their guy. But the Vrabel-Maye marriage is an interesting one to me, and we're going to dig into that a little bit deeper with Riddick and the types of things that Vrabel will really harp on with Drake Maye and how that meshes with the things that Maye needs to work on the most, playing the most important position in the sport. We're also going to talk to The Athletic's Zack Rosenblatt, who wrote a tremendous feature on Mike Vrabel before he was even hired by the Patriots. Zack covers the Jets for The Athletic. There's some interesting links there being made as soon as this story was released because Zack clearly spent a lot of time with Mike Vrabel. And we get into that, how the piece came together, why it came together the way it did, what he learned about Mike Vrabel, what he will bring to New England. And me personally, I got a little bit better sense as to what it will be like to cover Mike Vrabel. So we'll get to those conversations in just a second. Riddick, then Zack Rosenblatt. But first, let's talk some Tee Higgins. It was James Rapien, who covers the Bengals for Sports Illustrated, who was the first to break the news that the Bengals do intend to tag Tee Higgins if they can't figure out a long-term deal. The tag, as we speak, and we sit here and we record on Monday evening, the window to tag players opens tomorrow, which is why this is timely. I'm not sure we'll see this happen as early as February 18th. It's when the tag window opens, but they have a couple of weeks to try to figure something out with whatever players they intend to tag across the NFL, and then you go from there. The deadline, I believe, is March 4th. So we'll have news very quickly on whether or not Tee Higgins is at least scheduled to be a Cincinnati Bengal for 2025. They would start with the tag, try to work up a long-term deal, and that makes sense, right? Remember our conversation that we had with Mike Petraglia. This is now months ago, and he's talking about how Tee Higgins changed agents, and he now is the same agent as Jamar Chase, and that Joe Burrow desperately wants to keep Tee Higgins in-house. And he's on with Barstool Sports, talking about just how easily the cap can be manipulated. And you have a franchise quarterback making a boatload of money who wants to be able to just plain and simple outscore opponents because their defense is so damn bad. It's going to be really hard for the franchise to look at its franchise quarterback. Look at its franchise quarterback and say, I know you know that we can manipulate the cap, Joe, but we're just not going to do it because we don't feel like paying. They can do it. The quarterback wants them to do it. It seems as though all three, between Chase, Higgins, and Burrow, they're all three in on it. They all want to try to figure out a way to make this thing work long-term, and so Higgins, it appears, will be tagged and potentially signed to a long-term deal. The question now for the Patriots is this. What's the backup plan? Because they have to have one, right? They can't not go into 2025 and not upgrade the receiver position, right? So let's look at this one by one. First of all, let's look at the free agents. Free agency set to open in some way, shape, or form at the Combine. Combine's next week. That's where these conversations start. That's where the illegal tampering really, truly begins in earnest. I've got three names. Chris Godwin, DeAndre Hopkins, who's a Tommy Curran favorite, Amari Cooper, and then I've got a fourth that I think we should strongly consider. It's Davante Adams. You may be listening to this, dear friends, and saying, Perry, you lost your mind? Davante Adams ain't a free agent. Well, I know. But I think he's about to be. I think he's about to be released by the New York Jets. They don't want to have to pay him the exorbitant sum that is owed to him. No team is going to want to trade for Davante Adams on said exorbitant sum. And so unless they can eat an incredible amount of money and then trade him, they being the Jets, it looks like he's going to be released. And our buddy Albert Breer, Sports Illustrated, has reported exactly that on Early Edition in the last few days. He is very likely to be released and therefore will be a free agent. Now, why should the Patriots look into him? Well, the guy can still play. First of all, the guy did play for Josh McDaniels. And our friend Tom Curran has said many times he believes Davante Adams would be totally open to playing for McDaniels again. Now, would he want to come to the East Coast? I doubt it. But is he willing to go to a team that is willing to pay him near the top of the market still at this age? In this economy? He's 32 years old. He just turned 32 in December. But you look at his numbers from last year. Really impressive, especially given the guys he was playing with in 2024 between Vegas and the Jets. 1,063 yards on 85 catches, a whopping 141 targets. This guy plays and plays a lot. He played 14 games last year, 17 the year before that, 17 the year before that, 16, 14. That's going all the way back to 2020. He's had over 100 receptions each of the last 4 years prior to this past season where he had 85, a measly 85. I'm being sarcastic. Patriots would kill for 85 receptions. And he probably would have more than that with competent quarterback play. Aaron Rodgers was not a competent quarterback this year. I'm wondering if any team is going to want Aaron Rodgers in 2025. So Davante Adams can still play, even at 32. And the reason I like Adams over some of the trade candidates, and I like him, first of all, over the other free agents that we mentioned. Amari Cooper, to me, very surprising he didn't do more in Buffalo. I'm wondering where his career is headed from here. DeAndre Hopkins, I think, has even less left than Davante Adams. Chris Godwin is intriguing to me, though consistently banged up. So let's look at Adams versus some of the trade candidates. Cooper Kupp, I love the idea of Cooper Kupp. I really do. You're giving up a draft pick. And you're not paying him maybe as much as Davante Adams. We would just be guessing on Davante Adams' salary. But you are still giving up a pick, and it might be a third-round pick. And for a Patriots team that needs all the valuable picks it can get right now, maybe you're a little bit more reluctant to part with that if you can have Davante Adams. Deebo Samuel, no thank you. I'm not interested. It's a lot of money for a guy who appears to have seen his best days come and go. Again, constantly banged up. There are reports about him being out of shape, overweight, evidence of him not getting along with his teammates, coming off the field and choking people. Choking might be a little bit strong, but the kind of stuff you don't necessarily want to welcome into a locker room where things have been tenuous the last few years. DK Metcalf, I don't hate the idea. Not much of a route runner. You'd still take him if you're the Patriots. I'm not sure the Seahawks are going to be willing to let him go. And then there's the draft. Can you do better than Davante Adams in the draft? What do you do in the draft now that Tee Higgins might not be available to you? Are you more willing to take Tet McMillan at 4 overall? I think there's a case to be made for Tet McMillan in terms of the body control, the size. You were so bad when it came to third down offense, red zone offense, explosive plays through the air offensively. He could help you in those areas. He is the best pure receiver in this year's draft. I say pure receiver because I think Travis Hunter has the opportunity to be even better than Tet McMillan at that receiver spot in the NFL. Who knows if he'll play there full time? I think he should. That's just me. But are you now, more willing to take Tet McMillan at 4 overall, or maybe to trade down and take Tet McMillan? Are you more willing to trade down and go after a different type of pass catcher and take Tyler Warren from Penn State? That's not a bad idea as far as I'm concerned. Really lean into that 2 tight end thing. Drake Maye loves throwing over the middle of the field. He loved using his tight ends this past year. And if you go from Austin Hooper, who was a free agent, maybe they could bring him back. I'd be all for bringing Austin Hooper back. But Austin Hooper, Hunter Henry, can you add a third and just start rolling out 3 tight end sets? Heck, the Cardinals did it a bunch this past year. Their offense was more productive than the Patriots. And then you have, your true number one tight end moving forward for years to come. Whereas Hooper and maybe even Hunter don't necessarily fit that suit. So those are your options. You could still do the Tyler Warren thing. I think there's an argument for it. But I think Devontae Adams is your next best option. It just costs you money. You don't have to give up a draft pick. And the guy can still play. I know he's older. He's not a long-term solution. But at this point, long-term solution, short-term solution, you're just looking for solutions, friends. You're looking for a watchable product offensively. You're looking for a player who can help Drake Maye take that leap from year one to year two that so many people are expecting. So, the Tee Higgins dream may be dead. Feels like the Bengals really pulled the rug out from everyone that was hoping that would happen, like they've got some sort of meme coin. Unbelievable. We just dropped that podcast with Solomon Wilcots. Go back and listen to it if you want to have a good cry. If you were a Tee Higgins fan. If not, leave your suggestions for what the Patriots should do at receiver this offseason in the comments below. If you're watching us on YouTube, if you're listening on Apple Podcasts, leave us a comment there as well. We'll have another Next Pats podcast coming at you very, very soon. In the meantime, listen to Louis Riddick. Listen to Zack Rosenblatt. You'll enjoy. Thrilled now to have with us on the Next Pats podcast, friend of the podcast, Louis Riddick. Louis, thanks for being on with us again here, man.
Absolutely. It's good to see you, man.
It's a really fun week. It's fun for us, even though the Patriots are, let's just say, about as far removed from this game as you could be.
Yeah.
It's fun to sort of track what's winning in the league right now. And obviously, Patrick Mahomes fits that category for sure. But I'm wondering, as somebody who is experienced in the team-building realm, do you look at these two teams and then look at the Patriots and say, there's a little bit of a blueprint here for you to do fill in the blank if you're in New England right now to try to get back to where you want to be? Is there something that's happening here between these two teams that you look at New England and say, you should be trying to do that too?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of the blueprint is already, it's not something that's unfamiliar to the Patriots organization anyway, right? Because for the better part of 20 years, they had that blueprint nailed. There's some things that change in the NFL, but there's some things that will always be the same. And you're seeing that right now. December, January football, February football is about line of scrimmage play. That's how the Patriots we were just talking about this on TV. That's how the Patriots won. That's how they started their dynasty 2001, 2003, 2004. Led by defense, led by a great front, had some Hall of Famers on it. A pounding, physical, bruising running game, strong special teams. These are things that really embody what Philadelphia is all about, embody what Kansas City is all about. You think of Kansas City as being this high-flying, high-wire act with lots of trick plays and shovel passes and stuff, but really what Andy Reid is, Andy Reid is an old-school, two-a-day type of coach who has live periods in training camp, beats the crap out of his players, and then kind of like rehabs them during the season to where they're peaking just like they are now. That's the blueprint. Those are the teams that ultimately make it to this game. When the San Francisco 49ers make it to this game, that's what they are. They're bruising up front. They can rush the passer like hell. They can run the football with physicality. They have efficient, smart quarterback play. That sounds like the Patriots of years past.
Right.
That's what Kansas City – I talked to Andy Reid a couple weeks ago on the phone, called him from out in Vegas when we were out there doing a game. And I said to him, just tell me, what's different about Patrick right now? And he goes, if we didn't have Patrick Mahomes making the decisions that he's making, playing this, executing this offense at the level that he is, there's no way that we would only have one loss, and we'd be struggling right now. So really, like the blueprint is having a guy like Drake Maye continue to progress and evolve to where it's not so much about how far he can throw it or how much zip he can put on a pass. It's the decisions that he can make. Like Patrick Mahomes coming up in the pocket when his tackles are getting bludgeoned like they have all year long, and you see him do that vintage step up in the pocket. He's looking downfield. Then next thing you know, at the last minute, he finds the outlet over here and just goes dink, and you're going, damn, how did he know he was there? That's what gets you to this point. That's what Tom Brady could do. That's what Drake Maye needs to be able to get to that kind of point. That's what Joe Burrow does. I mean, that's what all these dudes do. So, it's out there. They know what it is. We all can see what it is. It's just whether or not you can get it all to come together.
Last time you were on our podcast, you were talking about Drake Maye and his potential, and I know you think very highly of him and what he was able to do through his rookie year. When you see that he's been paired with Josh McDaniels, what's your reaction?
Well, look, when you're talking about the blueprint, Josh was one of the guys who was obviously a tremendous contributor to formulating that blueprint along with Bill. He is a hard-nosed, wants to run the football, wants to be physical, likes to practice in pads type of guy. So does Mike let him do that? Well, obviously, that's what Vrabel is, right? So that's what they're going to be. He's a guy who's going to really stress ball security, great decision-making, ball placement, situational football, understanding what can be tolerated, what can't be tolerated, because he's done it at the very highest level. I think that's exactly what Drake needs at this point in his career. Not to say that Alex Van Pelt couldn't have done that for him, but Josh has a proven track record. If you're a Patriots fan, love or hate Josh McDaniels as a head coach, as an offensive coordinator, you cannot dispute his accomplishments.
It's so interesting when you put it in those terms. We actually had a chance to talk to Drake last night. He said the one thing that he really wants to focus on this offseason is taking care of the football and situational football. And when we think of a new offensive coordinator hire, we're thinking about scheme and we're thinking about play calls and what's it going to look like. But really when you get down to the foundation of it, it's that stuff that he is really supremely gifted in terms of coaching, it seems, based on all the work that we've seen him been able to put together in New England over the past.
Because of the fact that, just look at where we are right now, right? Radio Row. Because there's so much coverage on football, and there's so many people who have access to so much information about football, it's like everyone is trying to find out something or trying to come up with something about the game that no one else knows. The game always comes back to the same things. Like Bill would say, who blocks the best, who tackles the best, who doesn't turn the football over, who makes great decisions in 2 minute, end of half, in the fourth quarter, 2 minute, special teams, execution, snap, hold, kick. That's what it's always about. And you know what? There's coaches who talk about it, and then there's coaches who demand it, and then there's coaches who tell you there will be consequences if you don't do it. Bill was one of those people. He was like that in Cleveland. Josh tried to be like that as a head coach, didn't work out, but he understands it as an assistant. Drake's going to be better for it. Vrabel comes from that tree. Vrabel's a damn good coach, obviously, but you saw that in Tennessee. This is what, if you don't want, it's interesting. Like, you're getting kind of guys off of Bill's tree with Mike and with Josh. But something tells me Mike's just going to do it his way. He's not going to try and be Bill, but you're going to get a lot of that Patriot way, which I'm sure a lot of people would love to have the Patriot way back from 2005, 6, 7, 8, 9. You know what I mean?
No question about it.
And I think you'll be on the right track.
Yeah, and I think they could use some of that. I just think, in terms of things like on the field discipline, things that we could see, penalties, know where to line up. That's the sort of stuff that it's simple stuff, but it's the stuff he's going to really drill down on. Mm-hmm. I want to ask you about the Senior Bowl because I know you were just there. We do a lot of draft stuff on the Next Bats podcast here. Yeah. Patriots obviously have needs at some really critical positions, whether we're talking receiver, tackle, edge rusher.
Yeah.
Was there a spot to you or even a player to you that stood out in such a way that now that we're talking about the Patriots a little bit right now, you think about it and you say, boy, that would be a nice match right there?
Oh, geez. You know what? Some of those players, I'm such in Super Bowl mode that, I'm trying to think. But you know what? Let me just, since we're talking about quarterback, and I know the Patriots don't need a quarterback, but because it dominates the conversation so much, let me put it this way. I'll talk about two guys. Okay, we'll talk about offensive line. Since the Patriots, they need offensive line. They need guys who can come off the ball and really dominate some people. There's an offensive tackle from Boston College, Ozzie Trapillo, who Bill O'Brien, I got to see Boston College play twice this year, called two other games. He had one of the best weeks of all the offensive linemen at the Senior Bowl. He was a shutdown player in pass protection, strong, physical, played a lot of football at Boston College. That seems like a Patriot type of player. The second guy who I'll tell you this, who played quarterback, Tyler Shuck from Louisville. If he goes to a L.A. Ram type of scheme with Sean McVay, he goes to San Francisco with Kyle Shanahan, maybe goes up to a Minnesota type of system with Kevin O'Connell, Tyler Shuck's going to start, and Tyler Shuck's going to play high-level football.
Wow.
He can throw it. He's mobile. He's smart. He's a little bit older. He's married. He's smart. Tyler Shuck is going to be surprised of this draft if he gets to the right spot. He will be the surprise of this draft. Mark my words. He lit it up down there. A lot of people right now, look, I know people talk about Jackson Dart and, like, is he the third quarterback coming up in this draft? Tyler Shuck is going to be the third quarterback when it's all said and done. He may be the best quarterback to come out of this draft.
Wow.
If he went to the right place. And I love Cam Ward. If I was drafted number 1, that's the quarterback I would take. Tyler Shuck is the guy who I would try to keep a lid on it and get him on my football team because I think he's a starting caliber guy.
Tyler Shuck, potentially QB3 in this year's class. And if you noticed, Lewis, when you were talking about Ozzie Trapillo, I was trying my best to stay nice and quiet, even-keeled.
Yeah.
Ozzie Trapillo, from not only Boston College, but also from Boston College High School, which just so happened to produce the best, but also the only, host of the Next Pats podcast right here. So, great human being.
Yeah.
I actually played for his dad, Steve Trapillo,
really?
God rest his soul, was our offensive line coach when I was playing at BC High. You hear awesome things about him from everybody in the area there.
He blocked some of the best pass rushers, shut them out down there. That would be a good one. You can see him in the Patriots uniform.
He's working with Dante Scarnecchia right now.
There you go.
Maybe not today, but during the pre-draft process before the Senior Bowl. It'll happen again before the Combine. So lots of connections there. Can we play a game really quickly before we let you go?
Yeah.
This is our Jumbo Gumbo portion of the program, Lewis.
Okay.
So you're going to reach in with the ladle here. There's a little ladle right inside there.
All right.
You're going to scoop out a football.
Okay.
It's going to have a number on it. I love that when we get the audio of the ladle clanking around in the pot. Yeah, if you get one, it's all right. You can pull them all 3 out and then just grab one of them, however you want to do it.
Dang it.
There we go. He's an athlete. He's too good at scooping out the footballs.
Let's see what we got.
What do you got for a number there? 39, number 39, number 39, number 39. Okay, this is a good one for you, actually.
What is it, trivia?
No, this is sort of an off-the-board, not really nitty-gritty football, but still football-related kind of question.
Okay, go ahead.
What former teammate would you want to sit next to while watching this year's Super Bowl? Which former teammate would you least like to sit next to? It can be, you know what, I'll expand this. Obviously, you can go back to your playing days.
Yeah.
If you want to expand this to an ESPN teammate, you could do that as well. I'll leave that up to you.
What former teammate would I like to sit next to? I'll go back to my Cleveland days. Carl Banks, the former Giant linebacker. He and I used to have some great football. He's so damn smart. And he was one of the best linebackers in the history of the league.
Well, people in Boston know him because Bill Belichick wouldn't stop talking about that guy in press conferences for years.
Banks is the dude now. Who would I least want to sit next to? Oh, my God. Who talked too much?
There's so many answers. I feel like there's a Rolodex of names that are scrolling through his head right now.
Yeah, I'm sitting there trying. I don't know. You know what? I loved him, but maybe I'll go back to my Cleveland Browns days again. Maybe I wouldn't have wanted to sit next to Steve Everett.
Okay.
You know, the old offensive center from Michigan.
Okay.
Because he was one of those guys who just has a feeling like he would be annoying as hell. He'd probably be drunk. He'd like to drink a bunch of beers and stuff. Even though him and I used to get after it together. We used to go out now and then. But he'd be one of those guys who'd be annoying as hell to watch a game with, I think.
Yeah, you want to try to enjoy what's
I like
going
to watch,
on
yeah,
in
when
front
I watch
of you.
football, I don't like to talk
I'm
a whole
the same
bunch.
way.
I want to watch the
really
game.
Hard to watch in a bar.
Yeah.
You want to be able to listen to what's going on. You want to be fully invested.
Banks would be one of those dudes. Like, he'd be breaking down the play, and that's why I love Carl Banks is the guy, man.
Classic
That's
football guy. He wants to watch the Super Bowl and break down the game. That's why we love having you on the Next Pats podcast, Lewis. Thank you so much for being with us, man. This is great.
You bet. Thanks a lot.
Thrilled to have with us now on the Next Pats podcast, Zack Rosenblatt of The Athletic. You have a Jets podcast as well called Flight Plan. Thank you so much for being with us here, man.
Thanks for having me, man.
It should be a good time on Radio Row this week. I'm sure you are busy. You wrote a tremendous Mike Vrabel feature just ahead of Mike Vrabel being hired by the New England Patriots. Has he thanked you?
I don't think I had anything to do with it.
No, but it was great insight into who he is as a person. What was it like covering him for that specific piece that you were able to write?
It's funny, when I started that process, I didn't think the Patriots job would be open so I think it was like, if I had known the Patriots job was going to be open, I think everyone would have assumed it was going to be his job, honestly. I just had this idea, like, after he got fired by the Titans, I think everybody was shocked by it because he was very clearly one of the better coaches in the NFL. Always had a team ready to go. They were always playing above their talent. And I was just fascinated at the idea that he was going to be in this gap year, and especially once the Browns hired him. So, like, the idea of being able to like track someone like that as the season progressed, like, okay, at the beginning, how he's reflecting on what happened in Tennessee, in the middle, what he's learning about his experience in Cleveland, what he can use for that, and then towards the end, like what he's looking for in his next job. And so we had a mutual friend that like connected us, and they pitched out to him. He was interested. I flew out to Nashville. We met up. He kind of like, you know, sized me up, and then at one point he asked me, like, so what are you trying to accomplish with the story? Like, what can I do for you, like that? And I explained to him, like, you know, it'd be great if I could fly out to Tennessee, I could fly out to Cleveland, we could spend some time together. You know, we talk, you know, we check in throughout, and he's like, all right, let's do it. And he was willing to do everything. Like, I did not expect it. He wasn't historically known for being like very media friendly. I don't think there's really been like a definitive profile about Mike Vrabel, because I don't think he likes opening up to people. So he trusted me to tell this story, and I'm very thankful for it. And it worked out. And the funny part is I cover the Jets for like my main beat, and the day we published the story, I didn't know this was happening when I was publishing. I published it, and then I find out he's interviewing with the Jets that day. So I was able to like tie it in locally a little bit to get Jets fans excited. But yeah, it was just cool getting insight into somebody that I had no connection to, and I was just fascinated by his journey and the kind of coach he was, and the perception that he's like this hard ass and hard to work with and all that stuff. Like, I always try to, when I can, find stories about guys like that and like peel back the curtain and show like, okay, this is what the people who know him think. This is how he really is, like that kind of thing.
How did you feel he was to work with? How would you describe him, having spent some time with him now? You know, you hear the common refrain with Mike Vrabel is some descriptor and then the word a-hole. So empathetic a-hole, a good a-hole, a funny a-hole. Like, how would you describe him?
I mean, on all those things, I like empathetic a-hole. I know Chad Graff, who covers the Patriots for The Athletic, he had that. We wrote a story about him together after the fact, and he used that phrasing, and I think it is perfect, because like Mike Vrabel is Mike Vrabel at all times. Like, there's no faking it, but he's also like a very thoughtful, caring person. Like, what I would say is that first meeting I was just talking about, where I met him, like the first like 30 minutes are him asking questions, like just grilling me, interviewing me, asking me about my life, my fiance, how I got my start in this business, who my mentor was, what I want to accomplish. Like, he's like asking these, and he was looking at me, and he clearly cared. Like, and that's why I can see why. You know, I know there are some players that like didn't take to his coaching that well, like, because he's going to call you out in front of the entire team. If you mess up, he's going to show it in front of everybody. He's going to grill you in front of. But then at the end of the day, he's going to ask you about your family. He's going to ask you about your kids. He's going to know all their names. And so that was the part that was really telling me. That's the kind of leader you want. As someone who covers the Jets, like I always thought they had a really hard time with coaches who were able to hold them accountable. And he's someone who's going to hold you accountable while also like kind of being your friend at the same time. Like, he's able to straddle that line in a way that even like Bill Belichick, I don't think he was very good at that. Like, there's coaches that are good at one and maybe not the other, and I think he finds a good balance.
Oh, I definitely think that's an area where Belichick struggled, was being able to make that human connection that you're talking about, that Vrabel has the ability to make. Do you think it's going to get harder for him, without projecting out too much?
Yeah.
It does feel like today's athlete is a little bit more inclined to take to a certain kind of coaching, and that doesn't necessarily feel like Vrabel's style. So do you think he'll run into issues with a roster that's not very good, and with players who might not be all that open to his style? Do you think there are going to be some challenges there for him early on in New England?
It's funny you say that. He actually addressed that like directly to me, because he talked about how the landscape has changed so much with like NIL, and these guys come in, you know, whether they're entitled or they have like a whole different like approach. And so he tries, what he said, he's like, I need to learn about each of these guys and their journey, how they got here. And you can't coach everybody the same way. Like, I think he understands that. Again, like, we're talking in his year off. We'll see when he gets back in. Like, has he learned? Is he different? Like, he even admitted, he's like, sometimes I thought that I maybe focused too much on what everybody was doing wrong when I should have been like highlighting what they were doing right. Like, something he talks about a lot is like celebrating small victories. Like, there's a guy in the Browns, DeJuan Jones, who struggled with his weight, and there was like a couple weeks during the season where he like lost 11 pounds, and he wanted to make sure that like that's awesome, man. You got to like be proud of yourself for doing that and like build on that, and like, you know, the whole thing of like, okay, you know, a guy's starting and he's playing well, it's easy to like prop him up, but like a guy that's not, you know, seeing the reps but he's doing well in practice, like, you got to make sure that that guy knows that he's doing the right thing and to keep it up, kind of. So I think he has the right mindset, but again, we'll see when the bullets are flying. If you're losing, like, how is he handling it? Like, those are all questions that are unanswerable until it happens.
What was the most memorable moment for you in putting together that story that you put together on Mike in terms of the time you guys were able to spend together? Most memorable moment for you doing that?
I would say one of the funnier moments to me was we were at a restaurant in New York City. He was in there like seeing some NFL friends. We're at this Italian restaurant. First, there's like a guy in a Jets hat a couple tables down from us. I think he's had a couple drinks. And he musters up him and his like his girlfriend or whatever are like staring. You can see them, you can feel them staring. I'm sure Mike deals with that. Then at some point he like musters up the courage to slide across and be like, "Hey, so will you coach the Jets? You think?" And then we're on the way out of the restaurant. We're waiting for his Uber and I'm waiting for mine. And an Eagles fan walks by. He's like, "Mike Vrabel, I was hoping the Eagles would have hired you last offseason." And he laughs it off. But I just find it funny that like we were running in all these different fan bases that like have won.
Everybody wants him.
And he was handling it with like humor and stuff like that. But so those are the moments that stick out that will definitely stick with me.
Now, for Mike in this gap year, as you term it, where do you think he grew the most? From what you were able to glean in your conversations, maybe just talking to him at one point in time, and then by the time you got to the end of the story, where do you think he got better over the course of that year?
I thought the way he talked about his interactions with Andrew Berry, the Browns GM, he talked a lot about how he learned a lot about their draft process, how they use analytics. Not only that, but like the way they even like ask questions about the prospects, like removing the scouting report. Like Andrew Berry would ask certain questions about like, so what would you be most excited to coach? What like skill would you be most excited to coach up with this guy? What is something you wouldn't like? And so I think it helped him think about prospects in a different way. And so I think working with an analytically minded organization will be beneficial for him, I think.
Yeah, do you think he'll go sort of full bore when it comes to analytics in New England? I do remember one line, I think it was from the story that you and Chad wrote together after he was hired. Where he was coaching and he was giving, this is a very Belichickian thing to do, he gave their 3 keys to victory. Yeah. And the first key, I think, was something like run the ball 35 times.
Yeah.
And I'm saying, oh boy, I can picture Patriots fans that are a little bit more like analytically minded looking at that and saying, oh God, are we like going back in time with somebody who looks at just rushing attempts as like a critical stat, which is I know there are still football people who truly believe in that, and there's probably merit to it because of the physical impact it can make on the game. But, there's a lot of things that go into that. Sometimes you can run the ball 37 times because you threw for 3 touchdowns in the first half, and now you're just grinding the clock away.
Yeah, I would say to that, like, I saw some reaction to that in the negative, like in the analytics community. I think it was taken a little too literally. I think it's situational. Number one, they had Derrick Henry, and they didn't have a good quarterback.
Right.
So, like, those are 2 factors. And number 3, like the specific game that you're referencing, it was week 2 of his first season against the Texans. They had lost their like left tackle, right tackle, tight end, and quarterback.
Super banged up.
To injuries. Right. And so he's like, okay, so we're going to need to run the ball like every play. We're going to do Wildcats with Derrick Henry, and then we're going to have to hold them to 70 points or less, and we're going to have to win the turnover battle. Like, it seems very basic on its surface, but it actually goes deeper because he's like, yeah, so within those 3 things, so like an offensive lineman, how can he contribute to the, lack of turnover battle? Well, like, we can make sure that he understands that you can't let that defensive end get his arm around you so he can knock the ball out of the quarterback's hand. So he's like building tasks within these 3 keys. It's not like a football guy's like, yeah, I'm going to run it 30 times no matter what. Like it's all week to week, Mike Vrabel is willing to throw out his game plan from the week before, start completely fresh. And, I don't know how that ties into analytics, but like I do think he's open to all ideas. I think everybody on his staff he listens to, and I think that's an important feature for a coach. Like somebody, he wants his coach to disagree with him. He wants his GM to disagree with him. Like he wants those conversations.
As somebody who covers the Jets, do want to ask you about the Jets a little bit here. Aaron Glenn, what do you think? Is this the right hire for the Jets?
Yeah, he's what they need, and just like Vrabel, I think was what they need. I think Vrabel would have been the guy they would have hired if they had their druthers. But once the Patriots job opened, I think everybody knew that wasn't realistic. I will say it is kind of cool that you're going to have Vrabel, lifetime Patriot, going against Aaron Glenn, who was on the Jets for so long, like for the next few years. But yeah, the Jets needed, the cliche leader of men. They needed somebody who's going to hold this team accountable, who's going to hold them responsible. This team, when they've dealt with adversity in recent years, they've just fallen apart. They get injuries, they fall apart. You watch what the Lions did this last season. Their defense, they were losing guys left and right. They were pulling guys off the street, and they were not missing a beat. And I think that says a lot about the kind of coach he's going to be. There's a lot of questions. Who's the quarterback? How's the first-time offensive play caller going to be? How involved is Aaron Glenn going to be with the defensive scheme? Like, there's a lot of stuff they have to answer, but in terms of, like, the pure leadership, like, he's exactly what they needed.
Who is going to be the quarterback? Give us a guess. Give us your best guess.
My guess as of now is Tyrod Taylor, and maybe they, like, incorporate, like, a rookie like something like that, or Justin Fields, like a flyer on somebody. Like I just don't see Aaron Rodgers coming back. I could be wrong, but that's kind of where my head's at.
All right, you ready for the Jumbo Gumbo
Let's do it.
portion of the program?
Oh, boy.
Thank you, John Henry. All right, you're going to ladle out a little football here, Zach. Pick a good one.
All right.
43.
It's hot. Hot number 43. Have we already done 43? We have. He needs a different one.
49.
49. I'll ask you both.
Okay.
We could rapid fire these. 49 is biggest pet peeve. Biggest pet peeve. Zack Rosenblatt.
Oh,
Is
man.
it when a coach curses you out mid-interview? What is it?
Wait, are we
That wouldn't
keeping?
happen
Are
with
we
you.
keep-
You're
are
a very
we-
mild-mannered fella. Like I don't see
Are
that
we
happening
keeping
very
it just related
often.
to like the job, or?
Oh no, it could be anything. No, this could be.
So the thing
completely
that
off the
annoys
board.
me, I just thought of this: when you're on a plane and you're supposed to, the courtesy of you let the rows in front of you go first. Of
course.
The people who try and like weasel their way in and like shove their way in and get out of there quicker, acting like they have a layover flight or something like that. Like that annoys me more than
That
anything.
is one of the best answers we'll get all week for the Jumbo Gumbo, because that couldn't be
Airplane
more
etiquette,
accurate.
man. I fly a lot, so I think a lot about airplane etiquette. Like,
If that's not a pet peeve for you at home listening to or watching this right now, it's because you're part of the problem. You might be one of
You're
these
doing
people.
this.
Yeah, you are doing this, and you shouldn't be doing this. It's absolutely one of the rudest things that you can do in a setting like that, where people are already stressed out. Everybody has somewhere to go. You're not more important than anybody else.
and those 5 seconds you're saving aren't going to get you to your flight faster.
Yeah. Try a little humility.
Yeah.
I like that. Zach Rosenblatt, bringing a little humility to the program. Thank you very much for
Thank
being with
you,
us on
man.
Next Pass here. All right, great stuff from Lewis. Great stuff from Zach. We really appreciate you all listening as long as you have to this point. The Tee Higgins dream may be dead. Maybe Devontae Adams is that next guy. Maybe it's someone else. Patriots need somebody at that position. Got to figure it out. We'll talk about it more on the next Pats. It'll be coming at you very soon.